David Reynolds wasn't just another wealthy CEO who lived detached from his workers. He prided himself on knowing the ins and outs of his billion-dollar retail chain, the struggles of the cashiers, the long hours of the stockroom team, even the small frustrations of customers waiting in line. That's why, despite owning luxury cars and living in a mansion, he was standing in the employee locker room of one of his busiest stores at 6:30 on a Monday morning, pulling on a company polo shirt and pinning a name tag to his chest. The name on the badge read Daniel. Nobody in the store knew that Daniel was actually the founder and CEO. David had launched this undercover mission quietly. Official visits always felt staged. Managers cleaned up, employees put on fake smiles, and problems were swept under the rug. But real truth, he believed, was only visible when people thought no one important was watching. So, dressed in faded jeans and ordinary sneakers, he blended in among the morning crew, ready to learn what life on the floor was really like. The first hours felt almost nostalgic for him. He had started in retail as a teenager, bagging groceries and stacking shelves. Now, decades later, he was doing it again, smiling at customers, directing them down aisles, and scanning groceries at checkout. Some shoppers grumbled, some thanked him warmly. It was routine, exhausting, but oddly satisfying. He felt like he was back at the roots of what he had built. Around noon, when the store was buzzing with the lunchtime crowd, David noticed something that made him pause. Near aisle 6, a young black employee named Marcus was helping an elderly woman reach an item from the top shelf. Marcus's manner was polite, gentle, and patient, exactly the kind of service David wished every customer experienced. But then the store manager, Richard, appeared. Richard's face was red with irritation. He stormed toward Marcus and barked, "How many times do I have to tell you? You people never get it right." The words were sharp, ugly, and loud enough for the elderly customer to flinch. Marcus froze mid-motion, his eyes dropping to the floor. His hands trembled slightly as he placed the item into the woman's cart. But Richard wasn't finished. He mocked Marcus's way of speaking, ridiculed his pace, and sneered, "You should be lucky we even let you work here." The cruelty in his tone sent a chill through David's veins. Customers nearby turned their heads, uncomfortable but silent. No one intervened. Marcus, clearly humiliated, muttered an apology and tried to shrink into the background. David clenched his jaw so tightly it hurt. Every instinct in him screamed to step in, reveal who he was, and end the harassment immediately. But years of experience told him to wait. If he blew his cover now, he'd only see one incident. He needed to know if this was a rare outburst or a pattern. And deep down, he feared the truth, that this was not the first time Marcus had been treated this way. So David swallowed his anger, forced his face to remain neutral, and continued working. But inside, a storm was brewing. He had come undercover looking for everyday struggles in his stores. What he had found instead was something far darker, and far more personal. David didn't sleep much that night. He kept replaying the scene in aisle 6, Marcus's hunched shoulders, the cruel smirk on Richard's face, the silent disapproval from customers who did nothing. David had seen many forms of workplace conflict over the years, but what he witnessed wasn't just poor management. It was deliberate humiliation rooted in prejudice, and it disgusted him. The next morning, Daniel clocked in again, determined to watch more closely. He wanted proof, undeniable proof, of how deep this problem ran. Within the first few hours, he had all the evidence he needed. Marcus arrived early, carrying a thermos in a worn-out backpack. He smiled at coworkers, offering to help stock heavy boxes. Yet almost immediately, Richard swooped in. "Marcus," he barked, "why are you standing around? Don't you see the pallet needs breaking down? Move it." The words dripped with disdain. Another employee, a younger white worker who had been idly scrolling on his phone moments earlier, received no such scolding. David watched as Marcus obeyed silently, straining to lift heavy items while Richard sneered. The unfairness was glaring, but the other staff avoided eye contact. It was clear this was not unusual, this was routine. By lunchtime, the cruelty had escalated. Richard had assigned Marcus the dirtiest, most grueling tasks, cleaning the restroom, hauling trash to the dumpster, and mopping a spill he himself had caused. Later, when Marcus politely suggested reorganizing the stockroom to make it more efficient, Richard laughed loudly and said, "Ideas from you. Don't embarrass yourself." He then bragged about his clever plan to another supervisor, repeating Marcus's exact suggestion as if it were his own. David's stomach churned. It wasn't just Marcus being mistreated. He overheard hushed conversations in the break room. Two Latina employees whispered about how they always got stuck with closing shifts, even when they requested otherwise. Another worker muttered about being written up for minor mistakes while Richard's favorites got away with worse. It was a culture of fear, built and enforced by a manager who abused power. That evening, David decided to reach out to Marcus directly. In the parking lot, as Marcus was about to leave, David caught up to him. "Hey, man," he began carefully, still playing the role of Daniel. "I couldn't help noticing how Richard talks to you. Have you ever thought about going to HR?" Marcus gave a short, bitter laugh. "HR, Richard is buddies with the district manager. Complaints vanish. People like me don't get heard." His voice cracked slightly, but he steadied it. "Look, I need this job. My mom's sick, and I'm the only one paying for her medicine. I can't risk losing it." The weight of those words hit David harder than he expected. Marcus wasn't just enduring cruelty, he was trapped by circumstance, forced to swallow his pride for survival. David realized this wasn't simply about one man's mistreatment. This was about a broken system, one that allowed managers like Richard to thrive unchecked. As David drove home that night, he knew one thing for certain: his cover wouldn't last much longer. He had seen enough. The truth was uglier than he imagined, and it was time to act. By Friday morning, David had made his decision. Enough was enough. The past few days undercover had revealed the truth, and he could no longer stand by silently. He arrived at the store, but this time he wasn't wearing the faded polo shirt and fake name tag. He walked through the doors in a sharp navy suit, polished shoes, and the quiet authority of a man who knew he was about to change lives. The store buzzed with morning activity, carts rolling, registers beeping, employees stocking shelves. When they saw David, many assumed he was some high-level corporate visitor. Richard, however, strutted out of his office with a smug smile, clearly eager to impress what he thought was just another executive he could charm. That smile vanished the moment David asked every employee to gather in the break room for an urgent meeting. The room filled with murmurs as workers shuffled in, confused. Marcus stood at the back, wiping his hands on his apron, clearly exhausted after already completing the dirtiest tasks of the morning. Richard finally entered, late as usual, with a cocky air. "What's all this about?" he demanded, his tone dismissive. David stood tall in front of them. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," he said, his voice steady and clear. "My name is David Reynolds. I am the founder and CEO of this company." The room gasped in unison. Marcus's eyes widened, disbelief written across his face. Richard's expression turned from confusion to horror, his arrogance evaporating. Wait, you're the CEO?" he stammered. "Yes," David replied firmly. "And for the past week, I've been working here undercover. I've seen how this store really runs, not the polished version in reports, but the truth." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "I witnessed dedication, hard work, and genuine care for customers from many of you. But I also saw something unacceptable. I saw bullying, I saw racism, and I saw it coming from the person meant to lead you, Richard." The room fell silent. Some employees looked relieved, others frightened, as if afraid to even nod in agreement. Richard's face turned crimson. "That's ridiculous. These are lies." "Enough." David cut him off, his voice sharp. "I stood in aisle 6 when you humiliated Marcus in front of customers. I watched you assign him the hardest jobs while ignoring others. I heard you laugh about getting rid of him because he wasn't the image you wanted for this store. Don't bother denying it. I was there." Richard opened his mouth again, but the words died on his lips. His downfall was sealed. "You're terminated effective immediately," David declared. "Security will escort you out." A collective exhale swept the room. Some employees even clapped quietly. Richard, pale and shaking, stormed out without another word. Then David turned toward Marcus. His tone softened. "Marcus, I owe you an apology. No one should ever endure what you've faced here. You've shown strength, professionalism, and integrity in the worst of circumstances. From today forward, you're promoted to assistant manager. And I'd like you to work with me directly on new diversity and fairness initiatives for this company." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. He struggled to speak, finally managing, "Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say." David placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Just keep being who you are. You represent the values this company was built on." The room erupted into applause, louder this time, filled with genuine relief. For the first time in months, Marcus stood tall, his dignity restored. And as David looked around at the hopeful faces of his employees, he knew this wasn't just about firing a bad manager. It was about reshaping his company to ensure fairness and respect were more than words on paper, they were lived every single day.